Hey, good evening, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great week. I just wanted to jump on here this evening and just as a way of follow-up to Sunday and a precursor for your conversation here with your small group tonight, and just share a couple of thoughts with you about forgiveness. And we talked on Sunday about forgiveness being an important component to resilience, and we unpacked a little bit of what forgiveness is, and maybe I was hoping to help you understand a little bit more deeply what forgiveness is and what it's not. You know, I think it's not simply just turning a blind eye to ways in which we've been hurt, but it's facing those things, but then acting as God has with us. And we talked about the framing of this on Sunday and how important it is to understand that we are all sinners, and we are all part of, collectively at least, part of the problem. We are victims and villains at the same time. You know, victims and villains in one sort of self-perpetuating history of sin, where we're part of a bigger problem, and I believe that's what Jesus came to fix. And when we understand that, it helps us have a much better perspective, an empathetic perspective towards those around us, perhaps who have sinned against us. And I think it helps us lean into more imitating God in the way that He forgives others, in such a way that really is intended to reconcile the relationship, not just simply dismiss an offense. And so I wanted to illustrate this tonight with a video clip that I grabbed from a video that I'd seen a few years ago. And I believe I might have shared this with the church many years ago, but I wanted you guys to see this again. I think it illustrates exactly what I'm trying to say, and I'll come back in a moment and finish up with a few comments. So take a look at this clip.
This is a real story, and you're going to see how choices can affect your life.
His grandson murdered this man's son. And today they brought us all here in the power of compassion and forgiveness.
And when we are introduced, this man's grandson killed this man's son, this is the first time in their young lives they've actually seen an alternative to violence. Mostly what they see in our culture is an eye for an eye.
20-year-old Tariq Kamisa was an art student at the University of San Diego. He was an honor student who worked part-time delivering pizzas.
Tariq was a magnet. Always a lot of friends, very charismatic. He loved life. He lived life very fully. Was an old soul in a young body.
On the evening of January 21st, 1995, 4 teenagers who had been drinking and using drugs all day planned a robbery. They telephoned for a pizza, and when Tariq Kamisa arrived, a 14-year-old boy named Tony Hicks pointed a gun at him and demanded the pizza. When Tariq refused, Tony pulled the trigger and with a single shot, killed Tariq.
And then, of course, the anger set in when I realized that he had been killed over a pizza. It was another child, a 14-year-old, killing him. I think that's when it became so senseless.
At first, I did not believe that this was true. It's very difficult for parents to hear that their children die before they do.
From the onset, I saw that there were victims at both ends of the gun. My son, a victim of his assailant, that assailant, a victim of society.
In the courtroom, Tony confessed his guilt before his grandfather and guardian, Ples Felix.
On January 21st, 1995, I shot and killed Tariq Kamisa, a person I didn't even know and who didn't do anything wrong to me. I pray to God every day that Mr. Kamisa will forgive me for what I've done. And for as long as I live, I'll continue to pray to God to give him strength to deal with his loss. My grandfather promised me that he would be Mr. Kamisa's friend.
I was burdened with guilt, racked with betrayal, a sense of betrayal. My grandson went out and murdered this person, betrayed every bit of love that's ever been offered him.
From the beginning, Tony was fighting the odds. His mother was 15 when Tony was born. His father abandoned them both. And at age 9, Tony saw his cousin gunned down on the streets of Los Angeles. So Tony's grandfather, Ples Felix, took Tony in to live with him in San Diego.
All my uncles were gang members or drug dealers or in jail. All my aunts were pretty much the same. My mother up and left. She just left, and I cried a lot. Coming to the realization that maybe for some reason neither one of my parents wanted me, and they was just pawning me off to the next person.
Ritual. I remember in the Sufi tradition, we have a 40-day period for grieving. Well, 40 days are over, I was taught this stops the grieving process, because now when a loved one passes from this life to the next life, he stays in close proximity of his loved ones during the 40 days. After 40 days, the soul moves to a new consciousness in preparation of its forward journey. So my spiritual mentor told me, Azim, for you to continue grieving, you are impeding your son's journey in the next world. I recommend you do a good deed, a good, compassionate deed.
So what Azim Kamisa did was create the Tariq Kamisa Foundation to stop kids from killing kids.
And he asked me point blank, will you help me? I said, of course. That's an answer to my prayer. I will do anything I can to support you and your family. And if this is going to support other kids and not making the tragic choice that my grandson made, then we have a lot of work ahead of us to do.
Now let me ask you, would revenge bring Tariq back? Would revenge stop the pain and the grief that I feel?
I'm an international investment banker. Ples works for the city of San Diego as an enterprise manager. I mean, he grew up as a Baptist from the South, and I grew up as a Sufi Muslim. So I tell people this is not Mother Teresa meeting the Dalai Lama. If he and I can come together, in spite of all of these differences, we can all do it.
I tend to always forgive, but it's kind of hard to forget.
It's hard to forget, but forgiveness is something you do for yourself. Does that make sense? If I did not forgive Tony, right, I would be very angry at him, right? And if I'm angry, right, who does it hurt? It hurts me, because anger is not good for you. If you have a problem with somebody in your family, okay, whether it's a parent or a brother or a sibling or an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent or somebody else, I want you to reach out and forgive that person and think about how you want to heal that relationship. It'll be very good for you. It'll be very good for that person.
Tony is now serving 25 years to life for killing Tariq. Azim is asking the sentence be reduced and has offered Tony a job at the foundation when he's released.
His forgiveness wasn't something I expected. It wasn't anything that I knew about. Up to that point in my lifetime, I had known forgiveness. Nobody had really preached forgiveness.
I felt very, very bad for Tariq's family, and I felt bad for Tony. But I feel much better because forgiveness has been extended to my grandson and to my family by Mr. Azim Kamisa, and that healing process has helped me and my daughter and Tony and the Kamisa family in ways that we really cannot express. But it's also powerful. I can only tell you by extension, it's something that we all want to experience it at the point of really needing it.
I had a man forgive me for taking the life of his son. The least I can do is forgive the people who've wronged me or not been there for me in my life.
No, when Azim forgave Tony, it allowed Azim to begin a healing process, and it helped him and his family. began to heal from this traumatic loss. When he forgave Tony, it had the also unintended benefit of helping Tony, because Tony was burdened with this guilt of having killed this man's son.
So who's going to be a forgiving person from now on? Me. All of you, I hope, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
All right.
Take care.
Now, the long-term benefit of that forgiveness is that Azim and I are brothers. He is my best friend. There's nothing I would not do for Azim Kamisa. There's nothing he wouldn't do for me.
Now stretch your imagination. If all the conflicts in the world could be resolved like Pleasant Me, what would our world look like?
Amazingly, I did research on this and just found out that the guy in the video was actually released on parole just, I think, a year and a half ago, in large part due to the efforts of the family of the victim who fought for the last 15 years to get him out. And so what a remarkable story, and I think it illustrates so well the kind of forgiveness I'm talking about. I want to read one scripture. It says in Matthew 18, in verse 21, it says, "Then Peter came up and said to him, 'Lord, how often will my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? As many as 7 times?' Jesus said to him, 'I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore the kingdom of heaven must be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything." And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him the debt. But when the same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, "Pay what you owe." So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you." He refused and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debt. When his fellow servants saw what had been taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master summoned him and said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me, and should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant, as I had mercy on you?" And in anger his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay back all his debt. So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart. You know, Jesus tells this parable about forgiveness, and the reason he tells it is because Peter asked this question, hey, how many times do I need to forgive my brother? And I think Peter is still looking at this as a transactional kind of a thing, an eye for an eye. Well, he hurt me, so I got to forgive him, and he hurt me again, I got to forgive him. And so clearly there has to be a limit to this, right? I mean, this should stop at some point. And Jesus, demonstrates to Peter that through this parable that no, there's this, you're looking at it wrong. This isn't about how many times. It's about the nature of of forgiveness. It's the nature of how God has forgiven us. And so if we who have been forgiven so much, we should then reciprocate that same kind of forgiveness to others. And so it's a culture change, I think, is what Jesus is talking about. It's not just, it's imitating God. It's not just, okay, fine, I'll let this one go. It's something very different. It's a reconciliation of a relationship, and because of that, it's something that doesn't really have a timestamp on it. There's not a number of times that you forgive. There's something else driving the bus, and that is love. And so imitating God in the way he forgives us, I believe, is what Jesus is communicating to Peter. So for our discussion tonight, I'm going to include 4 questions in the discussion dialogue or in the information box on the video. But here's what they are. Are there or have there been relationships or people in your life that you are resistant to forgive? And how would you identify the root of why it is so difficult? Let's have a little conversation about that. Secondly, how might taking more of a cosmic view, and I mean cosmic, I mean, sort of broad view of sin in terms of the sin of humanity, how would that cosmic view of sin influence the way you approach the subject of forgiveness? Number 3, what do you appreciate most about the forgiveness God has extended to you? And what might change in your life if you extended that same forgiveness to others? And number 4, forgiveness does not imply ignoring offense, but rather turning toward it, confronting with love and the intent of repairing the relationship. how does this concept free you, and how does it challenge you? So those are the questions I want you guys to think about in your groups tonight. Let's have some great conversations. Hopefully this stirs you in some way and is able to help us all grow in our walk with God and really in our imitation of Him as we strive to love others in our lives. Look forward to seeing you guys soon. God bless.